All right, so I have a couple problems here that I'm going to go over. They have to do with complex numbers and multiplication of those complex numbers. So I hope you find this helpful, and let me know if you have any further questions. So we're going to use FOIL, firsts, outers, inners, last, because really what we're doing is we're distributing each of the terms in this complex number to each of the terms in the other complex number. And so we have to do that one at a time. And it's going to be just like multiplying two binomials as well. So I'm using FOIL. Firsts means, again, so these two, so the first terms are those ones. So it's going to be, whoops, wrong color. For firsts, -3 times 2. -3 times 2 is -6. Outers are those terms, so -3 and I. So I'm going to do -3 times I is -3I. Inners are going to be those ones, so 2I and 2. So that's going to be plus 4I. And lasts will be the 2I and the I. So 2I times I is plus 2I squared. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to combine my like terms. I'm going to combine those. And that will give me, I have that -6, and then the -3I plus 4I is plus 1I, and then I have that 2I squared. Whoops. And I could have done this step at the same time, but there's no reason to try to do too much in one step, so I didn't do that. But I'm gonna take care of this I squared. And what you need to remember is that I squared is square root -1 times square root -1, or square root -1 squared. So I squared is equal to square root -1, because that's I squared. And so what happens is the square root and the square undo each other. So I squared equals -1. And that's really key here. So on our next step, we're going to have -6 plus I plus 2, and then times -1. On my next step, I'm going to multiply the positive 2 times -1. And I'm going to get -6 plus I, and then it's going to be -2. And my last step is going to be to combine my -6 and my -2. And I will get -8 plus I. And I haven't checked to see if that's the answer that you wrote down. I can do that, but that should be the answer if I didn't make any mistakes. So we're going to use this FOIL again on the next problem. It's just the same thing here. Firsts, outers, inners, lasts. I'm not going to be quite so careful with my colors after I do the FOIL. So firsts, 5 times 5 is 25. Outers, 5 times -3 is -15I. Inners, 3I times 5 is plus 15I. And lasts, 3I times -3I is going to be -9I squared. All right, now what I notice here is that that -15I and the positive 15I, they cancel each other out. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. And so I have 25 minus 9 times negative 1. So I did two things here. I canceled those out. Those made a 0, so they don't show up in the next one. And I also remembered that I squared is equal to negative 1. And then negative 9 times negative 1 is positive 9. And then that's going to be 34. All right, so what I said I'd talk about more later is that these canceled each other out. Turns out that these two complex numbers are called complex conjugates because their real part is the same and the imaginary part, there's a positive and a negative version of the same thing. Positive 3i, negative 3i. Now, whenever we multiply complex conjugates, the imaginary part is always canceled out. So there will never be an I term when we multiply complex conjugates. All right. I hope this is helpful. Let me know if you have any further questions, and I will do my best to answer those as well.